Empress Gyra's scales rippled with disbelief as she watched through the observation portal. Her two albino hatchlings, precious beyond measure, rarer than starlight itself, were coiled around the small human child in what could only be described as adoration. This was impossible. The Empress was a creature of majesty, standing nearly 12 feet tall when fully extended, her serpentine body covered in obsidian scales that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. She had ruled the Cytherian Empire for 3 centuries, commanded fleets that made galaxies tremble, and birthed only 7 hatchlings in her entire life. 2 of them, against all statistical probability, had emerged from their shells pure white, a genetic miracle that occurred once every 10,000 births. Albino Cytherians were considered touched by the Ancient Ones, destined for greatness. They were treated with reverence by all who encountered them. They were her pride, her legacy, her future. And yet here they were, ignoring her entirely, wrapped around a 5-year-old human girl named Erin Vale. This makes no biological sense, Gyra hissed to her chief medical officer, whose own scales had paled with confusion. Run the analysis again. Your radiance, the readings are consistent. The hatchling's neural bonding signatures are stronger with the human child than with you, by a factor of 3. Gyra's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of profound disturbance. When the human delegation had arrived at her flagship 3 rotations ago, she had been prepared for the usual tedious negotiations. Humans were a young species, barely out of their own solar system, seeking trade agreements and protection under the Empire's vast reach. They were soft, weak, and bizarrely emotional. The delegation had brought the child as a cultural liaison, some strange human custom about seeing through the eyes of innocence. Gyra had found it ridiculous. What could a hatchling teach about diplomacy? But then Erin Vale had been introduced to the Imperial Nursery as a courtesy, and everything had changed. The 2 albino hatchlings, whom Gyra had named Tyreskull and Venthera, had been in their thermal pools when Erin entered. The Empress watched through the monitoring systems as the child approached with that peculiar human mixture of caution and curiosity. Erin had knelt by the pool's edge, her small hand reaching out slowly. "Hello," the child had whispered. "You're beautiful." No translation matrix could capture the pure wonder in those words, but somehow the hatchlings understood. Tyreskull had emerged first, his white scales gleaming like pearls under the heat lamps. He had approached Erin with none of the wariness he showed, even to Gyra. The child had remained perfectly still as the hatchling, already 5 feet long, had nuzzled against her chest. Then Venthera had followed, and both hatchlings had begun making the soft chirping sounds reserved only for moments of absolute contentment. Gyra had rushed to the nursery immediately, certain the human child was using some kind of pheromone manipulation or technological trickery. But every scan came back negative. There was no deception, no hidden agenda. The hatchlings simply loved her. Now, 3 days later, Tyreskull and Venthera refused to eat unless Erin was present. They became agitated when she left the nursery. They would not respond to Gyra's maternal calls, but perked up immediately at the sound of Erin's voice. It was humiliating, it was unprecedented. It was driving the Empress to the edge of rationality. "Perhaps," the medical officer suggested carefully, "we should consider the human's thermal signature. Their body temperature is remarkably consistent." "I am their mother," Gyra interrupted, her voice reverberating through the chamber. "I maintained optimal thermal conditions throughout their entire incubation. I was the first thing they saw when they emerged. I have provided everything. Yes, your radiance, but humans ... They have this quality. The psychologists have noted it. They call it unconditional warmth." Gyra slithered to the observation portal again. Inside the nursery, Erin was reading to the hatchlings from a human storybook, something about a dragon and a knight. The child's voice was soft, patient, filled with emotion. The hatchlings were completely entranced, their white scales pulsing with gentle light and rhythm with her words. When Erin laughed, they chirped in harmony. The Empress felt something crack inside her chest, not physical, but deeper. She had spent centuries perfecting her role as ruler. She was strategic, powerful, feared. She provided resources, protection, and genetic superiority to her offspring. But watching Erin with her hatchlings, Gyra realized what she had never offered: vulnerability. Humans were absurdly fragile. They lived barely a century, they had no natural weapons, no scales, no venom. By every logical measure, they should have been prey species, extinct before they left their homeworld. Yet here they were, spreading across the galaxy, making friends with species that should have devoured them. And they did it through this incomprehensible gift, the ability to love without armor, to show weakness without fear, to connect without conquest. Erin Vale was 5 years old, light years from her home, surrounded by aliens who could crush her with a casual movement. And she felt safe enough to laugh. The hatchlings didn't love Erin despite her weakness. They loved her because of it. Because she made them feel safe in return. Because when she wrapped her tiny arms around Tireskull's neck, she wasn't asserting dominance or measuring genetic value. She was simply present, simply caring, simply there. Jaira opened the nursery door and entered. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward her, 2 slitted and serpentine, 1 round and human. Erin smiled. Empress, would you like to hear the story? It's about a dragon who learns to be friends with. Yes, Shira said quietly, lowering herself to the ground in a way she hadn't done since she was young. I would like that very much, Tireskull chirped uncertainly. Venthera shifted closer to Erin. The human child looked at the Empress for a long moment, then patted the ground beside her. You can sit here. There's room, and for the first time in 3 centuries, Empress Jera of the Cytherian Empire, conqueror of 17 systems and mother of legends, sat down to listen to a story told by a child. By the time Erin finished reading, both hatchlings had extended their coils to include Jaira in their embrace. Perhaps, the Empress thought, humans had more to teach the galaxy than she'd ever imagined. Retry.